So I'd like to thank you for joining me today. I am a huge fan of your work, so I'm super excited to have you on. And so to start off, can you please explain a little bit about yourself for those who don't know who you are?
Sure. My name's Levi, and I wrote and partially directed, like staged. Um, I staged Paranormal Activity for the U.S.
That's awesome. And so before we get into more of your writings and everything like that, you went to the theater school at DePaul University and earned your BFA. And so how did that influence who you are today?
I studied acting from theater school, and gosh, that's a good question. How did that influence how who I am? Well, in lots of ways. I was younger then. I was in my early 20s, and you're sort of surrounded by like-minded people, other artists, and I think being around other artists in your age, your peer group, kind of helps shape you into an artist yourself. You learn more from them than you do your professors usually. So, yeah, I'm still dear friends with those people. My wife is one of those people, and yeah, I started off as an actor, but uh, in Chicago uh, at that time. I think that it remains true that you have to be many things to make a living. So I was what I'd call a hyphenate. Started as an actor, and then I became a teacher and director, and then I became a writer.
That's awesome. And so, when did you realize that you wanted to be a writer, and how did that influence your works today?
Well, I've always written informally my whole life, even when I was really little as a kid. And my dad was into it. He's into my work. He was a bit of an amateur writer himself, and I was a big reader too. I grew up on Stephen King and J.R. Tolkien and stuff like that, and I read to escape and found solace in those places, and then I just started, you know, um, taking it more and more seriously. And as I got older, I started writing for deaf children, deaf and hearing populations, and that work became really important to me and led me to the career I have.
That's awesome. And so, this next question kind of bounces off a little bit of your last answer, but you're the co-founder of the Neverbird Project. And so,
Mhm.
for those who don't know, it's a youth-based deaf and hard of hearing theater company. And so, what made you want to be help out and be the co-founder of this amazing project?
Well, I was teaching for a theater company in Chicago called Looking Glass Theater at the time, and I was teaching with some people who became dear friends and colleagues, and that work led me and one of my colleagues to start running the signed voice theater department at an elementary school in Chicago called Bell Elementary, which is one of the country's oldest and most prolific deaf and hearing schools. It was founded in 1917, and at that time they had seven deaf classrooms and six hearing classrooms. And still to this day, over 100 years later, ASL is an integrated part of that school's culture. Anyway, I and my colleague Katie Boza, we ran that um, theater department for years, and we started writing for those deaf populations to give those kids a chance at the stage. And it was just the best job I ever had. And I thought, well, this is important work. It's building community, and it's important to these kids and their family who were under resourced and underrepresented. So yeah, we formed the company and did our first work, which was a very dark, stark version of Pinocchio at Chicago Children's Theater in 2016, I think. And uh, that work sort of was, was potent enough or important enough to some people to lead to other work.
Yeah, for sure. That's so beautiful. And so, jumping into some of your works, had your writing Broadway debut in with Grey House in 2023. And so, how did that idea come about, and how did all those ideas create Grey House?
Well, Grey House is a ghost story, and I love ghost stories. I love scary stories. And if you've ever read, you ever heard of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark or More Scary Stories to Tell in the
Oh yeah,
Dark by Alvin Schwartz? Yeah, I mean, I read
those are
those when I
like
was
like those are like what you read in like school if you wanted to get scared. Yeah,
I know, and the drawings, the illustrations in particular were sometimes more scary than the stories
yeah,
themselves. But I loved those stories when I was a kid. They felt like I was reading something I shouldn't be reading, to your point. And I just wanted to do that. I wanted to create stories like that. And Grey House was born of a lot of things. I was going through some stuff in my personal life, some loss and stuff. And I wanted to write about that. And I wanted to write um, something with the theater company I had just become a part of called the Red Orchid Theater in 20. We did first did the play in 2019 there. And I had a deaf character in it, and it wasn't about deafness. It was just a character like any other. So that integration and that inclusion became a huge part of um, the seamlessness of the work. Anyway, um, the play it went pretty well here in Chicago, and um, got noticed and eventually found its way to Broadway. But to your question, where did it come from? Lots of places, some autobiographical, some from, my notion of my take on a ghost story. And then, I think most writers write from um, a place of dreams or nightmares. And I certainly do that. And I'll have like a nightmare, or a series of them, and I'll write them down and I'll try to dissect them and find a narrative. Um, so I wanted to write about, with all those components that I've named, I wanted to write about a house, a cabin in the woods, which is very specific to the genre. And I wanted to write about a house that held children because I was interested in youth and the sort of crucible of youth. And I wanted to write a little bit of a puzzle box for the audience to, chew on and figure out. And yeah, so that was the intent.
yeah. That's awesome. And so, jumping into your more recent work with which is Paranormal Activity, and so this is a very well-known movie, and so. How was it writing it where it's its own thing, but also paying homage to the movie?
You know the movie very well?
I've seen like clips of it preparing for the show, but I've never actually seen like the full movie.
Well, good. You're too young for it. No, I'm just kidding. Um, Gosh, the movie it came out when I was in my early 20s, I think. It came out in 2007 or something like that. And it's a found footage movie, kind of like Blair Witch or those kind of movies that tell the audience that it's true, that it really happened. And I think that's an exciting offer. It's kind of exciting, especially in the horror space. Um, so when the the possibility of writing the stage play landed on my desk, I was excited by that challenge because you can't really write a found footage horror
Yeah.
piece for the stage, right? But you can make the same offer. You can make the audience wonder if something's real. You can make them wonder if what they just saw happened, if it happened or not. So that felt like a dare, and I love a good dare. So because I have a history of writing impossible stage directions, like in Grey House, there are stage directions in that play that are crazy. It's like the refrigerator bleeds, or this wall becomes a new wall, or the children descend upon the man and skin him alive, stuff like that. Lighthearted fare. Anyway, I hooked up with this amazing director, Felix Barrett, um, over in London, and I spent the better part of a year in London researching um, Victorian spiritualism and the spiritualist movement and mediums and stuff like that. And I just got really interested in that access point to the story. So yeah, the play is also about a marriage and a young couple in love and the ways that sometimes those things don't work out the way we want them to. And I wanted to write about that too. So I just kind of merged those two things and with the help of an incredible design team, an incredible illusionist, incredible director, we just set out to write something kind of or create something kind of impossible. So, it pays homage to the movie in that like it's scrappy and uh, wants to sort of pull the rug out from audiences' feet and make them worry and lose sleep. And other than that, it's sort of a personal invention. Um, yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And so speaking about the design team, how was it to be able to make your ideas for these amazing illusions thing? And like Chris is such an amazing designer. And so how was it actually having someone at your side to help you create this amazing show?
Gosh, it was like being in school again with a bunch of like mischief makers. It felt like we were all skipping class and hanging out in the bathroom and lighting cherry bombs. We would just giggle with the possibilities at our fingertips. And Chris, as you said, is a he's a genius, an illusionist, and whatever we come up with, he'd never say no. Uh, so it was great. It was like the kind of collaboration that I would wish for anybody, any artist. To sit in a room with those people, with Anna Watson and Fly Davis and Chris Fisher and Felix Barrett and Gareth Fry and um, cook up our dreams. We had workshops. We try things out. We tried a lot of things that didn't even make the final cut.
Yeah.
We'd say, well, what if this person was here and then they appeared over here? How would you do that? Or funny thing is, at one point we toyed with the idea of lighting people on fire, um, of spontaneous combustion on stage, which um, we were disappointed to find out you can only burn someone alive for 17 seconds on stage before firefighters have to come and put them out. You got to cover them with gel and all this stuff. We had a lot of crazy days of thinking very irresponsible thoughts. But yeah, it was a dream come true.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, without any like major spoilers, was there a moment when writing this when you were like, this is good, this is gonna be amazing? And how did that help you write the rest of the show?
And I've never been asked a question like that. I don't know how to answer it. You know, no, I don't think I have that kind of confidence as a writer. I think because of, what I write is so personal, but you kind of have to, art is an act of faith, you gotta you have to sort of leap. And if you're lucky enough, as I was on this particular project, to be surrounded by people like I was surrounded by, um, that mutual leap of faith is kind of comforting because you're all sort of in it together. So if one of you falls, you all do. So it was in our mutual interest to lift each other up to make sure we put forth the best product we could. That and the we're standing on the shoulders of a pretty powerful franchise. So we want to do our best to honor that.
Yeah, for sure. And so, with this being a US tour, what are you looking forward to the most of audiences seeing the show at different times? Because some theaters are going to be seeing it when it's like the holiday season and it's a like a Halloween horror play. So, how does that feel for you?
It's cool, it's a kind of play that doesn't really feel like a play, and it brings in audiences that don't don't go to the theater as much as others, and some film going audiences, some people who are horror buffs, and people who are just coming for a thrill and to see something maybe they haven't seen before. So No, our favorite part has certainly been sitting in the audience. We know what happens, we've seen it, but watching them watch it and to hear the chatter and the electricity in the audience and the screams and gasps and the way that all these strangers unite in their fear and kind of hold on to each other the same way that we do on a roller coaster, you know? Um, yeah, we like the idea of building little communities who get to talk about it on the way home and, you know, ask each other, like, did you see what I saw? Or how do you think they did that? Or what do you think this meant? Um, yeah, it's been great. And so the goal is just to get it in front of as many people as we can.
Yeah, and it's funny to talk about the like talking about on the way home. I'm not spoiling anything, but in scene two, my dad and I had like an hour ride home, and for the first half of the drive home, we were just talking about scene two constantly, and like it's such so well written, so realistic that it makes it feel like kind of an immersive experience, and it's truly amazing.
Good. That's
Uh,
good. I love that. And scene two in particular is kind of when a thing happens
yeah.
that sets this literally sets the stage for what you're about to see. So I love that. I love that you and your dad had that experience. I had a similar. My dad and I had such a huge shared. Our whole world was this kind of thing. So that's very. I love that.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh gosh, to keep the faith, like I think um that's another question I don't think I've ever been asked before. Um, yeah, keep the faith. I think it, my younger self is a kind of a wide. It could be a lot of people, but I think as an artist, especially when you're growing up, and you're in troubled waters or trying to make ends meet or trying to figure out like is the work you're trying to create worth it, all you can do is kind of keep the faith and hold steady, hold your nerve. I think I'm glad that I did, but I definitely had days and long nights where I thought, well, I should get a real job. And it only now it occurs to me that I have one, So hold your nerve.
Yeah, for sure, that's awesome. And so this next question kind of ties into the last one. But what advice would you give to younger artists who want to become a writer, or more specifically want to write horror plays? Because like for me personally, I've tried writing horror plays but don't know where to start.
Well, you have to start with what scares you. What do you find unnerving? What keeps you up? What do you lose sleep over? That's part of it. That's a huge part of it because you know yourself better than anyone. So I'd say start with that. That's one bucket. Uh, Another thing that I think is probably a little bit more important is, as a writer, I usually look at what I'm going through and I ask myself like, well, what's the loudest voice in my head right now, right? What is louder than anything? Which usually equates to like what hurts the most, or who do I wish I could talk to right now? What would I say? You know, those that's what most stories are made of. Um, so those are two buckets. Another thing is, I like to think, and somebody smarter than me said that every good story starts with a map. So, if you look at any great fantasy novel, open it, the first thing you see is a map. And I think that's true in any good story, whether or not you see the map or not. So it helps to draw one, to make one. I do that. I do that. I have crazy doodles, it's insane looking pieces of art. Um, yeah, write late at night, um, write in the dark, um, keep your process private to yourself because as soon as you share it, you'll you'll find doubt because everyone has an opinion, but no one's opinion is important as your own. So yeah, hold your nerve. It's kind of precious. Um, I know that sounds really like highfalutin and fancy, but I think that it's true. I think with being an artist takes faith, um, even when it seems like the worst idea possible. You should stick with it. You know, there's no such thing as a bad idea. It's true.
Yeah, for sure. That's amazing advice. And so that actually wraps up the interview today. I'd like to thank you for joining me.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. It's really, thank you for reaching out. I think that's such a cool move on your part